What screams, I'm an entitled POS? Many moons ago, I sold cell phones. Part of purchasing a cell phone is a credit check. Well, this schmuck came into my store wanting a cell phone and apparently called ahead to let the store know he was coming. And my boss told me I had to be super nice to him. He arrives in a suit, has his arm candy with him that was busy fawning all over him in a cringeworthy way. He picks his cell phone and I start the process. When I ask for his social, which is required by the cell company, he says no. I politely explain that I can't continue the process unless I have his social, and he goes, just wave it through. Something I can't do. I state again, I have no ability to do that, and he pulls the, do you know who I am? Nonsense. His arm candy then chimes in with, he's a very important lawyer, so we don't give that kind of information out. By now, my boss senses a hiccup, and the schmuck comes over and tells me to push through the order, knowing full freaking well I can't do any kind of thing like that. I call the cell provider, who doesn't give two cares who this guy is, and says, sorry, we can't process it without a social. My boss was furious at me. The customer was furious at me and my boss, and they stormed out. My boss tried to write me up over it, even though he knows damn well I can't do a single thing about it. Screw people like that. His obsequious POS boss is even worse than the lawyer. Story 2. Military wives who think that the rank of their husband makes them important. Back when I was a boot fresh out in the fleet, I was living in the barracks and there was always an E5 on watch in the lobby, making sure the barracks dwellers were not trashing the common areas and smoking only in the designated areas. One particular guy's wife would always spend the entire day in the lobby and a couch watching TV like she owned the place when her husband was on watch. She'd go out to the smoke pit and smoke and then tell other actual military members to pick up trash and get onto them if they strayed too far from the smoke pit while smoking. Always saying something like, I could go get my husband if you don't do what I say. An E5. And of course, there are other officers' wives or college-aged children that will be out at the bar or some other social place and act snobby toward you once they find out you're enlisted. Story 3. I'm a tech support phone monkey. Pretty much nobody understands the meaning of technician availability. So when their TV services go out because of some sort of technical issue and I tell them the earliest available appointment is a week out, it inevitably gets to the point where they ask, can you just reschedule someone else who isn't having a service outage? Like, yeah, you'd love that to happen to you, wouldn't you? All of a sudden, the appointment you had scheduled, who knows how long in advance and planned your schedule around, gets rebooked because some entitled schmuck convinced a service rep they were more important than you. I'm sure you'd be perfectly understanding. I swear, it's like people don't even think before they say this thing. Story 4. I worked as a cashier for a grocery store that went overboard with the whole customer worship thing. Like how you cannot start a new transaction until a previous customer has retrieved their bags and left the pay station. That's fine to ensure packages don't get confused, but a few customers figure this out and would regularly misuse it just to assert some sort of pointless dominance. Had one woman who would always plop her purse at the end of the register, casually root in her purse for nothing and essentially dare you to start your next transaction. I got to the point where I'd hold the first item of the next order over the scanner and turn to stare her down, item in the air. It usually inspired the new customer to ask if something was wrong, and then tell them loudly, I'm so sorry, our policy dictates that we're not allowed to begin until a previous customer is gone. And unfortunately, she stopped messing around with me and moved on to the cashiers to play her stupid game. She complained about me several times to management, but I could always deflect with how the next customers were upset, and I was just trying to explain her happiness policy with honesty. Holding that item over the scanner like a weaponized grocery. Story 5. I haven't, luckily, dealt with many entitled people, but the most entitled person I ever met was when I was a manager. I started as a sales associate and moved up several positions in less than a year, mostly due to high turnover, but also because I worked hard. So I was still pretty young. Hired this lady in her 40s to work as a cashier, and she insisted on only doing things explicitly stated in her job description and nothing more. She must have missed the line that said, and other tasks as assigned by management. She turned her nose up and refused to take out the trash, wouldn't clean the bathrooms, wouldn't help other departments get their sections ready at the end of a shift, and always with this accusatory tone and look in her face like, you expect me to do that? She would just sit there and wait for everyone else to finish what they were doing, and had the nerve to ask if she could leave because she was done. I'm like, nope, we leave as a team. As a manager, I tried to take care of most of that because everyone else was usually busy and I was generally free to move around as I pleased. But at the end of the day, I had to count the cash register and other management-related tasks, but Sometimes you just need to help out your coworkers. Story 6. I have a perfect example. Story time. I'm from the East Coast, but I live closer to the West Coast due to my husband being in the military. Last year, my parents came to visit and stayed at the Hilton. I went with them while they checked in because I haven't seen them since I moved. Anyway, my dad has the lowest possible version of the Hilton honors, but that didn't stop my mom, who acts like an entitled POS, from telling everyone around her that she's Hilton honors and she should be treated as such. They got a very nice room, but my mom complained because it wasn't a Hilton honors room. There was a very nice man who carried her bags up the stairs. No elevator in the building they were staying in, and she complained to him about the room and she deserved the best treatment. I swear, if I heard her say, "I'm Hilton Honors" one more time, I would have smacked her. They eventually did get moved to a Hilton Honors floor. The room they had before was actually nicer. But my mom always demands the honors rooms, so whatever. I don't know how my dad has put up with her these past 30 plus years, but I'm glad I don't have to deal with her a lot anymore. My dad is much more humble than my mom is. I feel bad for him. My parents stayed at Hilton with me. My dad had the lowest version of Hilton honors, but my mom was still acting like an entitled POS and tried to get the best treatment because of it. Also, I'm hammered. Story 7. There's a lot of good ones here. Most recent one was last year for me. I'm the team admin of my daughter's travel soccer team. 12 girls on the team. First year of travel, so it's different than just club or play for fun stuff for just about everyone. Trainer or coach sets the practice schedule. 4:30 p.m. Monday, Wednesday each week. 1 week into the school year, a mom, whom I had met previously and knew she'd be a problem, emails me to state, "These practice times don't work for me. We need to change them to 5:30 that coincides with my son's practice times." To be clear, 11 other families, the trainer, and so on, all scheduled their lives around this and were making it work, but we all should change our thing for her. Her kid was the biggest pain all season, and because she didn't get her way, mom pulled her with 4 weeks left in the season. Bye-bye. Don't let the door hit you or the Lord split you. Story 8. Oh boy, I can tell my story from earlier this week. Scene. Roommate and I are driving a friend back home. We stopped at a friend's favorite hibachi place for dinner because we wanted a nice meal before we began our trip home. It was a 5 to 6 hour drive both ways, and we sat in a booth. There were people in the booth in front of us, and they were going off on the manager and waitress because their Mongolian beef was just a bit more cooked than asked for it to be. Like, marginally more cooked than what they ordered. And the guy was throwing a huge fit, screaming, "Screw you, buddy!" Just making an absolute goddamn scene. Then he turns to look at us. I'm in his line of sight, and he stared me straight in the eye and said, "I'm sorry for the scene I'm about to cause." As if I was going to support him. I was dumbfounded for a second, but then I told him straight up to get off and that if he made a scene or tried to involve us, we'd absolutely be giving a police report on him and his behavior. It's not like the beef was inedible or even remotely far away from what he asked, but like, my dude. He then proceeded to throw a huge fit at me for telling him to quit being a child and that I would report him for mistreatment and whatever else I could. He said he was going to call his lawyer and get me punished to the fullest extent of the law. Okay, dude. And I'd regret talking to him like that because I'm just a child. I'm 23 and this dude was in his 40s, my best guess. I look my age, but not like a baby. I have visible tattoos and facial piercings. So then he and his wife just get up and walk out without paying. That wasn't before they made an absolute mess of their table, dumping food, drinks, sauce, and everything else they had on it. I was so much more mad about that than him trying to yell at me. I wanted to key his car. I didn't, but the thought was therapeutic enough for me. But yeah, they left without paying or saying anything further after they made a huge mess at the table. The manager came back to talk to us about what happened because it was a mess. But we weren't too bothered. Like, it was upsetting, but we weren't mad at the staff because obviously it wasn't their fault. But yeah, I witnessed a couple in their 40s act like complete and utter children because their beef was cooked slightly more than they asked for and then told them to eat mess because they tried to make me and my friend support them. Story 9. People who think their title means something and they're deserving of perks, or that you should be lucky because you know them or whatever. Waitress here. Supposedly the drummer from Michael Jackson came to our mom and pop restaurant all the time. Gave us a signed photo dedicated to my dad and grandma who also work here. Got their name wrong and forced me to hang it on our bulletin board. We never asked him to, but he insisted because it would help our business grow. We tore it down as soon as he left. He was also rude and never tipped. We sell gift certificates and one day caught him using a scanned copy of said voucher. They're just paper with my signature on them, and I could tell my signature looked off because it was printed on and not hand-signed. We called him out on it, and he denied all of it and made a big show of it. Left and came back with the real vouchers he was making copies of, saying they were real and someone must have given him fakes. We keep all of the vouchers people use, and we found 6 replicas he used. Haven't seen him since. But his wife occasionally comes in order to go and hides in her car until the order is ready because she's embarrassed. His kids and wife were there that day as well. Just pathetic. Also, no, we don't accept vouchers from his family anymore. The wife's embarrassing antics are the perfect dessert to this chaotic meal. Story 10. Former movie theater box office employee. We had people go into the movie, watch the entire thing, and then come out and complain about some random thing like, oh, so-and-so stole my seat, or there was a noisy child, and demanded either a refund or a free pass. Like hell to the no. If there was a problem and you didn't inform an usher when the movie was going on, that's your problem. I can't refund you a ticket because you already saw the damn movie. We had people come in all the time and pull us for free tickets to the point where management doesn't allow us to give them out anymore unless it's an emergency. Weather or power outage. The moms who would be there to buy their kids movie tickets into an R movie and then leave were trashy too. I get dock pay if I allow kids in that aren't supposed to be. But my favorite was this middle-aged guy with 10 of his buddies who came in and tried to use a movie pass in a movie that doesn't allow passes. I told him no, and he threw the biggest adult temper tantrum I've ever seen. What an entitled... Then there was that time that a child retched in the lobby in a busy morning and the mother refused to clean it up because that's what the employees are for. She walked right up to my box and asked me if I was going to clean that up, and then took her sick child into the movie anyway. I quit that day, actually. Story 11. The famous, "Do you know who I am?" line. I used to work the door security for a local bar. It was a very busy night, and I was going through the interior of the pub when I saw a group of kids. These kids played in a local band. They were quite well known. 2 of the members were siblings, and their dad had some semblance of local music fame, which they have used as a stepping stone to bolster their own recognition. They were little else than a local pub covers band. They had very big ideas about themselves, but they were no different from the hundreds of other bands in the pub circuit. However, the main thing that people used to say when talking about the band, how good of a singer is she? She's only 15. Him there on the drums is her brother. He's only 16. Their ages were very well known as they had been all over the local media. I walked up and told them to leave as I knew that they were not old enough. They argued, and the brother of the 2 siblings came at me with, "Do you even know who we are?" I responded very firmly with, "Yes, I know exactly who you are. You're..." And she's, "You play in a pub band. You're 16 and she's 15. Get out." Then they told me that, "Our dad will get this place shut down. Do you know who he is?" I did indeed. He was one of the oldest friends of the landlord, and also my uncle. Suffice to say, nothing more happened. Story 12. People who clog space, especially private space. There's a stage show that I've seen 99,000 times. Seeing it so much, the old version, I had a loop in my head of how it was supposed to be pulled off each time, so it was easy to see something would go wrong if a cue was missed or whatever. Either way, this doesn't bode well for 2 women who came up to where I'm standing. A spot that is beyond empty. They could have picked anywhere else. I take a step to the side, they follow, and they start crowding my personal space even more. At this point, I don't care for their antics. If they're trying to thrill me to notice them, make jokes on them, I'm not straight and do not care or swing that way. Then the elbowing starts. At this point, there's about 2 minutes left in the show, the big finale. Said finale uses some pretty potent fireworks laid in the corners of the stage area that turn into a nuclear winter when they go off. Lots of noise also to match. Closer, closer, closer. That's right. Keep elbowing the guy standing there wearing steel-toe boots. Closer, closer. Finale action on stage, disappear in nuclear winter. At this point, they scrunch up in shock at the sudden explosions, and I quickly lash out with my foot in a down-low circular motion and make hard contact with the one elbowing me in her ankle. "Hey, watch it! That really hurt. Why did you do that?" Whoosh, I'm gone. Seriously. I'm rushing up a staircase at that point and melted into the crowd. Probably still haven't learned their lesson about personal space, but hey, enjoy the free hobbling. Story 13. Being male of Arab descent that is between 15 and 30 years old. Okay, now that I've considerably shoved myself into the corner with all the other prejudices, let me explain. First and foremost, I don't care if someone is Arab or not, or Middle Eastern, or African, or whatever else. What this group of people has in common 90% of the time, when I see them in my country, are a few very obnoxious qualities. Any talk or discussion becomes a confrontation, like a peacock opening its feathers to scare away predators. If there's such a thing as an inside voice, they do not use it in public whatsoever. The louder they get, the more right they think they are. They are the first ones to cry about being disrespected when confronted with stone-cold facts, while completely disrespecting the person they're talking to. They cannot listen to someone. They have to, again, very loudly, repeat their own view and position nonstop because the more and the louder they repeat it, the more they will drown out the other side. And thus, they will be right. And it will always happen while half butchering my native language. They speak it well enough to show they've been raised here, but the accent is so thick and sentence structure off enough that I can pick these people out without ever seeing their face. There is no doubt a bit of a culture barrier, and many likely don't mean it quite the way I interpret it when I come across them, but the arrogance and attitude, that is something I only see in people with that kind of ancestry, and it is horribly pervasive. How do young people like that turn into the old man variety of that culture, which are typically more reasonable and more softly spoken than native of my country at that age? I don't recall the last time I saw older individuals of that culture with such issues. Story 14. People on public assistance who use their food stamp money to buy 12 packs of soda. Take them outside the store, dump said soda out into the pavement, go back inside to collect the deposit money. Use it to buy cigarettes and drinks, then stroll out in their fancy expensive clothes and get into their fancy expensive car and drive off. If that's you, screw you right in the ear. I used to work at a store and the number of people who misuse the system was staggering and disheartening. That's not what it's for. It's for people who truly need a hand and have zero problems with people using it who need it. But if you've got a $40,000 car and your outfit costs more than 2 weeks of my pay, you don't need it. I'd much rather see those people be forced to get off their lazy back and get a job, and that money be used to help homeless folks and other needy folks. Again, I'm not saying everyone on public assistance is lazy, so don't bother with hateful comments, but we all know that some people are just pieces of trash that skate by on it when they're perfectly capable of working like the rest of us have to. I had a friend who had a well-documented medical condition that limited how many hours a week she could work. Her husband was unexpectedly partially paralyzed after a surgery and suddenly couldn't work at all. Their income was below the threshold of qualifying for assistance, but they got turned down for no good reason. Last I knew, her parents were helping them afford the mortgage, so they were homeless while they figured out what to do and if they could appeal. Yet, no one cares enough to go after the people that are just lazy and abusing the system. This country is so messed up in some ways. Story 15. The truly devious ones are the ones that stay in the line knowing they forgot something, but won't get out of line because they don't want to wait again. So that when they are finally checking out, they pull the, "Oh no, I forgot such and such," as the check is scanning their items and they walk back out with zero sense of urgency into the giant store and come back 5 to 10 minutes later with what they forgot. All the while the cashier is tapping on her feet and giving the other people in line an, "I'm sorry, I don't think she'd take this long" look. This move ensures their place in line that everyone behind them is angry. One time this happened and the lady took so long, the cashier sent her husband to look for her and the lady came back before the husband only to say that the husband was paying. So she went back out to find the husband. When they finally both got back and the line was a mile long, the lady turns to the line and says she's sorry. That makes it better. If you're enjoying the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe and like button for more videos like this. Story 16. Nonchalantly says, "Oh, is blank in today?" Or, "I'm golf buddies with blank." The dealership I work at has the owner's family name in big letters in the front. If you're an employee, you pretty much know who the family is because they're in and out regularly. And one of the grandsons is working in sales or management and super down to earth. One time I had a guy for a transmission service and he said, "What do you mean a big charge this much?" I know, name of grandson who works here. While grandson was in the room, grandson then looked him up and down and said, "No, you don't." And the guy responded, "What's it to you, buddy?" Super condescendingly. I then piped up and said, That's grandson." Needless to say, I haven't seen him back in the dealership for anything in about 6 months. Story 17. They live maybe 25 to 30 minutes from the major commercial or shopping center of their city. They drive in with intent to buy a new phone or pick up an order early or get some custom work ordered. When told that the item is out of stock or not in yet, because we didn't call you like we told you we would, then the item came in. Our customer work will take more than 1 hour. They demand the store reimburse them for gas money. Worked retail for 10 years. When this first happened, I was so stunned by their entitlement or balls, I literally just sat there and stared at the guy for a good 2 minutes. Too stunned to speak. I hate these people with all of my being. Like, I literally have never hated anyone so quickly as when some schmuck doesn't think to call and see if we have the new iPhone in stock 3 days after it releases. Screams at me to pay for the gas for his 20-minute drive. You can go to hell. Story 18. Oh yes, I used to work in a smallish company where we didn't have a janitor or anything. If toilet paper ran out, one of us would go and fetch a new roll. If paper towels ran out in the dispenser, one of us would put in more. Trash can full, one of us takes it out. At least that's if you're a normal person. We had these baffling 3 women who thought they were princesses and would go around the office loudly complaining that we were out of TP or paper towels, or that the trash was starting to smell but never do anything about it. Turns out these princesses who thought cleaning up after themselves or lifting a finger was beneath them were considered the trashiest people in the office by the rest of us. They'd dirty up the kitchen, leave crumbs and a mess after eating. Dirty coffee mugs. Ugh, makes me mad just remembering them. Story 19. People who push and shove their way to the front of the line to get on a plane when their group hasn't even been called. God, the worst. I was waiting to get on a plane last weekend and no groups were being boarded except people with small children and in wheelchairs. A scattering of very entitled-looking people were all standing, blocking the aisle to enter. The flight attendant got on the PA and said, "Please move aside if you're not traveling with small children or in need of additional assistance to get on the plane. We have people coming through who need some extra space." The entitled people all looked at each other and no one moved. So these people, carrying babies and in wheelchairs, had to uncomfortably squeeze through all of them. Then when she finally started calling boarding groups, none of them were even in the first few, so they were just in the way for everyone else. Why are people like this? Story 20. I work part-time at a cigarette store. We card everyone as part of policy. However, everyone apparently is too long a word for some people to understand. Why do you have to card me? I'm old. Yes, sir, but I have to put in the birth date. This apparently entitles them to make fun of me, my job, my store, and my coworkers because they have been so put upon us to have reach into their pocket and extract 5 ounces of plastic. You'd think I just asked them to remove one of their digits with a claw hammer. But, sorry, we have to card everyone. Basically, it comes down to, but trust me. Why can't you, a stranger I've never before seen or spoken to, also trust me with their job? Story 21. People who camp in the left lane. It's the passing lane. If you're not passing, then you're in the wrong lane. Litterbugs. This, I'm sure, will get some hate, but most of the dog owners I meet. I don't like your dog. Keep it on a leash. I'm not a dog person. I do love animals, but most of them I want kept away from me. My pets don't run up and start sniffing at you or invading your personal space. Please respect other people's personal space. Just because your dog is small doesn't mean it's okay to run around in the store. I'm cool with service dogs because they're behaved. I rarely see service dogs in stores, I just see dogs running around. To all the responsible pet owners, thank you. My wife is very allergic to pet dander, and if you keep your pets under control, I don't have to stop what I'm doing so we can go back home for her to shower and take allergy meds. Babies and movies. I understand you want to go out, but I don't need your wants to disturb my night. Story 22. Story time. So I went out fishing last year with a buddy in his 92 Lund. Nothing special, but reliable. We were out just after dawn and finished till noon, getting towards the dock and starting waiting patiently for our turn to pull out. There was a long line of both people coming off and launching, and everyone was staying in pretty good line. We were there for almost a half hour, and a guy pulled up in a brand new truck and pontoon, which was about $125 of toys altogether. I told my friend jokingly, bet he gets mad he's not next. Right after he pulled up, and while he was still getting the pontoon ready to launch, our turn came and we pulled up. As I was walking to the truck, I heard him yell, "Hey buddy, how about you wait your turn and I'll let someone else in?" I told him how long we waited before he even pulled in, and as he kept talking, I told him to go screw himself and kept walking. Story 23. Saw a kid wearing his local high school lacrosse penny waiting to catch a train into Chicago for Lollapalooza. He's with a group of 8 or so teenagers. He finishes a tin of dip, scold, and throws the empty tin over his shoulder on the ground. I leave my fiancé on the next bench, pick up the tin, walk it around to him, and say, "I think you dropped this." I extend it to him, look him dead in the eye, and wait. Awkward pause, then he takes it, apologizes under his breath, and throws it in a trash can. Worst part, though, were the girls. The group took over a big part of the train with a few poor bystanders caught in the crossfire. One girl who's dressed like a festival biddy spills a water bottle on a little old Hispanic lady. The girl just laughs. Oh my god, guys. So to make a broad generalization, all teenagers at music festivals are entitled POSs. Story 24. I live collectively. It's a mess. To answer your question, not doing your dishes. This happens every day, and it's so rude to everyone else who uses the same kitchen and the same utensils or plates or pots or pans, etc. Even when dishes are done, they're not always properly done. Especially pots and pans are usually left greasy, sometimes with bits of food still on them, and are usually never picked up after drying. Don't even get me started on the state of our stove. It once gave me half an asthma attack. Playing music, shouting, banging on doors, singing, etc. in the hallways, especially when it's really late. The hallways are right outside rooms where people deserve some peace and quiet. Leaving a tea bag in the electric kettle we all use after a cup. I actually went and bought a teapot to fix this mess. It goes unused. Not scraping the floor after a shower so the rest of us have to walk on water. Someone once made a poo in the toilet and then just didn't flush. Story 25. When I worked in the banking industry, people would often lose their mind over being charged a $10 monthly service fee because, according to them, it's ridiculous to charge them for holding their money. Never mind the fact that it's far more secure and convenient than carrying the money around. Never mind the fact that along with storing your money, we offer a ton of other services, a lot of which they use. It should just be free. It makes sense to some degree. After all, the bank can earn money from your money by loaning it out. They are required to give you your money back when you want it back, but often they make it both difficult and slow. The typical story of banks immediately removing money from accounts with payments, but taking 1 or more days to add it to your account? That's time in limbo where they don't owe interest and can use the money as they please. Obviously, a bank isn't just someone who holds your money. They offer services. You get a card and capacity to pay anywhere without physically carrying money with you. You often get online access to your bank stuff so you don't have to go in, etc. So it does make sense for consumers to be charged money for the convenience, but to say it is for storing the money? Nonsense. It should be a service fee, not a storage fee. Story 26. I work on the facilities crew at a conference center or day camp in the mountains of NC. There's a lady who works for the center full-time. Is a very involved member in the town where we are located. We usually put cones up on the road leading to the parking spots in the back of the main auditorium because when people are parked there, it partially blocks the only path on which we take our truck multiple times a day to pick up supplies for various events. One day, she drove over the cones and parked back there anyway. We approached her as she was getting out of the car and nicely asked her to move her car, to which she blew up at us, screaming that she wasn't just any random trying to park back there and stormed off. You don't care who you are or how much you do around here. Don't park back there. Story 27. We are in Paving. There are a few emergencies beyond spring potholes and parking lots. Homeowners generally have years to figure out that their driveway needs work. We're typically booked for half a season before we even start work in the spring, and a month later, we're pretty close to capacity and starting to issue warnings that they might be waiting for next spring. Then you get the calls from folks who expect to have their driveway done next week, probably can't even get an estimate next week, and they try to wheedle, saying, it's just a small job. Like I want to put off a $50,000 parking lot to cram in their measly one-car driveway. I generally just say that some folks have been waiting a year to have their driveway done, and it wouldn't be fair to make them wait longer just because you have a party in 2 weeks. Last year, after being told we were booked up, a man nearly cried. He really wanted us to do the work and whined, what am I supposed to do now? Story 28. It's not much, but here goes. I worked at Cold Stone Creamery one summer and loved the job through and through. Best job ever. I lived in a desert town and people were so stoked to be getting something to cool off that they didn't even complain about long lines or anything. One day a girl came in and ordered an item that had hot fudge. I would always mix in the other ingredients and put the fudge over the top so that it wouldn't melt the ice cream. She requested specifically that I mix in the fudge. I hand her her order and she looks at it and says, it's all melted. I say, I'm sorry, I can remake it and just pour the fudge over the top. She says, please remake it, but still mix in the fudge. I point out we're probably going to be having the same conversation in about 2 minutes about how hot things melt ice cream. But she insists. I redo her order the way she requested. She looks at it again and, predictably enough, complains that it's melted. I say I'm sorry, but I'm unable to keep hot things from making ice cream melt. This witch tells me, no offense, but she would rather have a coworker remake it. I get my manager and explain what's happening. He offers to remake it. You can guess what happened. After the third bowl of melted ice cream doesn't meet her approval, she says she maybe just wants a different item. The manager says he's not giving her a fourth item if she only paid for one, so she demands her money back. He says no, so she calls us both schmucks and storms out. Story 29. At Starbucks, there's a 50-cent upcharge for special milk, including having your drink made with half and half, which is actually a bargain considering how much half and half that is. If he made it himself, he'd go through at least half a gallon of half and a half a week. He'd make a big stink about it before because he was an entitled schmuck and insisted that he shouldn't have to pay for something that we offered for free in the bar, where people usually add a splash of it to their coffee, not 14 ounces. So we usually didn't charge him because it was easier not to. One particular busy morning, a cashier accidentally charged him because things were so insane that she didn't even think about it. 20 minutes after the fact, he stormed the counter to scream at her for charging him. After a 10-minute screaming tirade, she was crying and shoving free drink coupons into his hands just to get him to leave her alone. She was a wreck for hours afterward. She still had to be on register because it was peak, and thanks to his little hissy fit, the line was really long. Everyone was apparently nice to her about it, but she was still upset about it for weeks afterwards. Sadly, the guy didn't get banned. He even had the audacity to come back the next day. He just became one of those guys in the store. Story 30. My mom works property management, and she maintains that her stupidest homeowner was the guy who looked at the payment coupons, which say coupon for payment or payment coupon or something to that effect, and then right below, pay X amount if before date or Y amount if after, and attach this coupon with payment and send to address. Guy didn't pay for like 3 months and finally got a late notice in. Called my mom asking why he'd gotten it, and she told him that he hadn't made any of his payments. He told her, "But I sent in the coupons." He just saw the word coupon, read none of the other information on it, and assumed that he was getting coupons to waive his fees for his first year of ownership. The man was older, and this was not his first home. Mom actually got in a lot of trouble for this because she asked him, "Are you actually that stupid?" before she could stop herself. She also gets a lot of people who miss their late notices or bills, etc., because they just throw out all of the letters they get from the management company, thinking that they're advertising trash or newsletters or something. Story 31. I worked at a Hollywood video in the town I went to college. The wealthiest guy in town, millionaire plus, made his money in payday loans, literally earning off the backs of people he took advantage of. So his son was a frequent customer and was a real schmuck. He had the same first name as his dad, and he kept taking his dad's credit card to pay for stuff. He let that slip once, and we told him he wasn't allowed to do that anymore. He tried this a couple more times, getting more and more terrible each time. Finally, his dad came in. I let him know that his son couldn't do this, and he went off. Literally the stereotypical, "I could buy you" crap. "My son can go out and buy a plane right now in cash. Who the hell do you think you are telling him he can't buy a bag of popcorn?" About 5 straight minutes of berating and talking to me like I was trash. When he left, I was so angry I was trembling. I had to go to the back office for a half hour to calm down before I could deal with customers again. I got my petty revenge. I happened to be a shift leader, so I commented in his account and every one of his family members that they'd have to show ID and could never rent with a single cent of late fee in their account. We had a bit of a grace amount. Dude was rich, but by God, I was going to make him account for every $1.07 and do it in public in front of everyone else. Story 32. 8 years ago at the Home Depot, a 30-something years old lady is at the self-checkout and wants to buy sod. She's there with a female friend and an older man. Father-like, I mean. Now with sod, we would always receive a daily delivery every morning and sell them until we ran out. But the pallet was outside, so we would always ask the customers whether they had checked if there were any rolls left before charging them, and giving them a slip to be able to leave with the merchandise because we didn't know. So this woman is being condescending about the sod thing. I asked her whether she had confirmed there was sod left before coming to the cash, etc., and she was being like, yeah, I don't care, just sell me some freaking sod. And then start chatting with her friend, and I would repeat the question, but after explaining 3 to 4 times how it worked and we were starting to get impatient towards one another, I ended up just selling her the sod and to hell with it. Well, turns out there was no sod left. They had to come back in and get a refund. Her father then took the extra time to come to me to complain that I sold him sod and there was none left. Blah, 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 and added, "My daughter is crying now, I hope you're happy. Next time, don't be such a witch," and left. What the actual hell? Anyway, I told security. He was never allowed in the store again after that. To this day, I can only imagine this grown woman crying over sod. What the hell? Story 33. I work at a ma-and-pop pizzeria, and people will always yell at me on the phone, complaining that it's too expensive and that they don't feel like paying that price. One time, this guy ordered 2 pizzas and around 50 wings, which comes up to around $90 after taxes. I told him this price, and he said thanks and hung up. No problem. 20 minutes later, his witch of a wife calls back in a condescending tone asking how much the order was again, because she thinks the price her husband understood was too high. I tell her the same price again, and she lost it. She first asked me to break the price down to her. I did and told her the exact price it will add up to. It is during dinner rush, so I really don't have time to deal with her considering I'm the only one taking orders on the 2 phones in this place. She proceeds to scream at me. I proceeded to rant about how I'm in university because I was really offended by this claim, and I don't smoke either, but that's not important. I proceed to reiterate the price until my boss gets on the phone to again confirm the same price I told her, only for her to scream about how she refuses to pay that price. 40 minutes later, and this psychopath is at the front of the pizzeria yelling about how she wants to see the condescending schmuck in the phone and asking for an apology from him. But I just pretended that I wasn't that guy and was still offended that she thought I didn't even graduate high school in the phones. My boss had to kick her out of the store and the husband had to come in and pay the original price. Kinda awful that she was such a witch though, because she was hot as hell. It wasn't surprising that the husband was really geeky looking though. I couldn't imagine anyone putting up with her unless they were desperate. He did seem like such a nice guy. Very sorry for him. Story 34. I still can't even think of this story without laughing. I think I posted this a week or 2 ago. I worked in a high-end resort. Think Gwyneth Paltrow, Bill Gates, stay here, type of high-end. In hotels, you have a lot of guests asking to check in early. You can't guarantee it, obviously because you have a checkout time, usually around 11 or 12. And then you have guests who have late checkout requests or simply refuse to leave the room until whenever the hell they feel like it. This guest comes in, says that he talked to someone who guaranteed him a 9 a.m. check-in. He told him, "I'm sorry, but we don't have your room ready yet. We'll be happy to hold on to your luggage," that whole bit. So he goes to the pool, comes back, the room still isn't ready, goes to the bar area, room is still not ready, and so on and so forth. Finally, it's around 12 p.m. at this point, and there's a lobby full of people. His room is still not ready, but we're doing the best we can. He's very upset at this point. I watched him tense up for a moment, and then suddenly, he let out a giant fart. So here's a grown man standing in the middle of a hotel lobby that just went through a multi-million-dollar renovation, where many CEOs, corporate bigwigs, actors, politicians have graced with their presence, who's quite literally resorted to farting until he gets what he wants. The manager had to come out and escort him outside. I'm not sure what happened after that. Well, if you like these stories, here's more. YouTube thinks you're going to love this. Catch you in that video.